Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another FrameGame video. Today we will be talking about the EA E3 press conference. Now, I won't be going over virtually everything that they talked about, but I'll mainly be talking about the major games that mostly stood out to me in these conferences and how I feel about them. Some of them are like, oh, it's okay, but other ones I'm like, I'm not holding my breath out for it to be absolutely incredible. I have a list here on my computer that I'll be going through and looking at, but like I said, I'm not going to try to hold my hopes out for some of these because, you know, we've been let down in the past, especially when it comes with E3 and EA games in general. Like, there have been so many letdowns that I'm not going to reach out and be like, this is it, this is the year. But I am still somewhat hopeful with some of these, but I am definitely going to start out with something that they started with, which was Battlefield 5. Now, I'm not the best to talk about Battlefield in general because I've never played a Battlefield game. Now, I know a lot of you are, how dare you, sacrilege, or whatever, but yeah, I've never played a Battlefield game. It's just hasn't been my thing. I have played the Battlefront games, which have, I guess, somewhat similar gameplay, but on a much worse level, apparently, because were received way worse, you know. But it is a DICE game, so I have some experience with their type of games and gameplay. And I must say, Battlefield 5 does look pretty cool. I did like how many vehicles there were, how there were so many planes flying around, dogfights and stuff. That looked pretty awesome. So I am thinking it's gonna be pretty good. I mean, the thing is, it's DICE, you know. They've messed up in the past, like I said, with Battlefront and Battlefront 2 with their insanely expensive characters to unlock and stuff. It was essentially a pay-to-win model. And naturally everyone hates that because then it makes the game unfair for anyone who doesn't buy that stuff. And so I can still see that happening because, you know, DICE, they've done it and they're making this game, Battlefield 5. But at the same time, I've seen how well Battlefield games have been received in the past and how successful they've been among my friends and whatnot. So I do believe that this can be, if they do it right, a very good Battlefield game. It has a lot of potential. Like I said, with all the vehicles and stuff, it looks pretty cool. The graphics phenomenal, of course, but it's DICE. They're amazing when it comes to graphics. So I have it definitely has a lot of potential. And they also had this Royale reimagining mode with the game. Another Battle Royale, oh boy. But of course, I don't know, I mean, I could see that working really well in the Battlefield verse. You know, with that type of gameplay, Battle Royale is, I'd say, the natural next step in progression for these types of games. I mean, it would certainly work, for sure. Kind of like Battlefront 2, like the old Battlefront games and stuff for PlayStation 2 and whatnot. Their big open area-ness and fighting and stuff. It just fits a battle royale kind of game mode, you know? So I am expecting that to be successful. Honestly, I'm surprised that PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds or whatever, I've never played that one either, but I am kind of surprised that it's still going. There's so many new ones now, Fortnite and whatnot, that seem to be better. Every time that I hear about them, everyone's like, yeah, PUBG or whatever, it's fun and whatnot, but there are long stretches of periods of time where you're just not seeing any enemies at all, and then by the time you find someone, you could die almost instantly, as is the, you know, Battle Royale model. But at the same time, these other games, Fortnite and stuff, seem to fit more stuff into their game, into their world. You have more to interact with. You could break down buildings and build bases and stuff. You know, there's more for you to do during those times in between before you fight someone. And that's where I'm surprised that PUBG is still in existence, just because a lot of other games seem to be doing it, but doing it better, and that's what PUBG is all about, is the Battle Royale thing. They have announced more stuff to hopefully combat it, but I feel like they'll need to do a lot in order to compete, essentially, with these new ones coming out, like Battlefield 5 Battle Royale. Like, that's going to be hard to compete with. That with such a AAA major game title that's so successful as Battlefield, that's had like 5 games or whatever. Also made by DICE, who's known for making like the most graphically pleasing games. It's gonna be challenging, to be sure. I can imagine they're not gonna, keep going until they really raise the bar. But yeah, so that's why I can see Battlefield 5 being so successful, is because they've not only have they added so much, and the graphics once again are phenomenal this year as well, but then they're adding this new game mode that is so popular amongst the gaming community on like Twitch, YouTube, you see it everywhere. So I am fully expecting this game to at least succeed. But like, it's gonna do phenomenally, I'm sure, but I just don't know if it's gonna be a game that I'm particularly gonna be like, yes, this is the Battlefield game that I'll finally get into, or whatever. I don't know if it's strong enough to pull me personally in, but we'll see. I'll have to see more gameplay and trailers to be fully assertive on that. Now, aside from this, the EA has also announced Star Wars games. Surprise, surprise. But this new Jedi Fallen Order game, so that's fun. I mean, they've had Battlefront and stuff, but I don't know, that Battlefront and Battlefront 2, it definitely feels Star Wars-esque, but it doesn't recapture the greatness of the past Star Wars games that I played. Whether it be like Jedi Outcast and whatnot, which was by far one of my favorite games. And I'm hoping that this Fallen Order can stand above and beyond, because the Battlefront 2, it had a story campaign thing. That's what I've been wanting in Star Wars, but it wasn't very memorable, let's call it. It was kind of a, well, I did that, done with that, and then I forgot what the entire thing was altogether. Force Unleashed was a right step in the direction. It was a lot of fun, having super crazy powerful Force abilities of like pulling down that giant. That's the biggest thing that I remember from that game, is just pulling down like ships from the sky and smashing them into the ground and being like, I am so strong. But at the same time, part of the allure of the older Star Wars games was that you were a Jedi, but you weren't all powerful, so you had this sense of, I gotta be careful the next time I run into an enemy. It was still challenging and intense, but fun, and you were a Jedi, lightsabers. But I'm really hoping this Fallen Order draws back from those older games and really pushes the story element, because it's an original Star Wars story. So I'm really hoping that they push this like single player campaign that I've been wanting for years for a major AAA Star Wars game. Now, aside from that, included with Star Wars, they introduced Battlefront 2. But they're, of course, it's already out, but they're adding not only new maps and stuff, but like an entirely new system, like starfighter modes and stuff. That looked really cool. But then they also talked about adding the Clone Wars, like maps from the Clone Wars. I know a lot of people, that's their favorite portion of the Star Wars verse from like books and stuff. Not so much the movies, but And so many people were excited to have the option now to have General Grievous and Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker. They're adding more or less the Clone Wars. They're adding the planets and stuff, and new maps to play in, so I am very interested in that. Hopefully it does well. You know, they've had so many bumps when it came to Battlefront 2. I feel like doing this is more catering towards the actual fan base of what people want. They're looking at what people want and they're like, oh, people like Starfighter modes. Oh, people like these different systems. There was like a squad system or a new command post capture mode thing. Like, that was essentially originally in the first original Battlefront games where you captured the posts around the map and stuff. And that was my favorite game mode. So I'm 100% like, yeah, finally. You know, they should have done this at the beginning of Battlefront 2's life, not at the tail end or whatever. But hey, they're doing it, and they're also bringing Clone Wars, so they're definitely catering towards what people want, as opposed to just kind of making a crazy pay-to-play game model thing. So I am happy to see how they're having kind of a switch up in direction, so to speak, when it comes to how they're approaching this game. Now, the next one I am so excited about. I have to talk about this for sure, and that is Unravel 2. I played Unravel, and I loved the aesthetic. The graphics beautiful, the parallax backgrounds and stuff, and being so tiny in the big house world. It's very great and satisfying. It was easy, you know, it wasn't super hard or challenging, but with Unravel 2 they've come out, and one of the first things they said is that it will be harder than the first game. So if you want a challenge, here you go. You're going to have a bit more of a I don't know how much harder it's going to be, but hey, any harder is, you know, very welcome, in my opinion. It was just too easy. But on top of that, they're adding a co-op adventure mode. And this I am huge on. I love co-op games so much. Couch co-op, my sister and I, we've played all sorts of Nintendo Switch co-op games whenever I'm at her house. I mean, we just love co-op, and they're adding a co-op adventure to this, where you're like, you have the red yarn guy and the blue yarn guy, and you start out like as one. It was very interesting in the gameplay trailer. They were literally like one being of yarn, and then suddenly the second player joins, and he like ripped out of the other guy and became the blue one. He was like, bloop, I'm my own man now. And that was funny. I really liked how they did the thing with, because they also made it so that not only can you play co-op, but you can play it single player, and if you played single player, you still control the red and the blue. You can still split and have the blue one go up and do something, which means that it'll be faster. This is the one thing that I'm worried about. It's going to be easier and faster in co-op mode, because like I said, you're controlling both of them single player, or you have your friend control the blue one, right? And so when you're having your friend control the blue one, you're not having to worry about both of them at the same time or whatever. And so it's going to make it easier, and by making it easier, it's also going to make it more fast-paced, because in single player you'll have to stop and focus on like the blue one to make sure you get him up onto the ledge so that you can have the red one climb up the rope or whatever. But in multiplayer co-op, instead of having to worry about switching and thinking about what you're going to do or whatever, the other person hanging out with you is just going to instinctively be like, okay, here's where I go, and they're going to go up there, and you'll be able to beat the game a lot faster in co-op mode. That'll bring down the, you know, the gaming experience a bit, because it'll make the game shorter. I am a little worried about that. Because Unravel, it was a fantastic game, but it wasn't a super long game. It didn't take me too long to beat it, you know? I felt like Ori and the Blind Forest, I felt like that was longer than Unravel. I don't know, it felt like a fairly short, a fantastic experience, but somewhat short. And so if they don't make Unravel 2 longer with the addition of this co-op play, you're going to be able to beat this game so fast. And that's what I'm really worried about with this game. Like, other than that, I am 100% sold to this game so far. It is as beautiful, if not more beautiful than the first game, and the additional co-op as well. They also made it a little bit more adventurous. The trailer they had, there's like a turkey chasing you, so there's a much more of an action-y scene going on where you had to avoid being pecked alive. So it looks fantastic, but we'll see once it comes out, I guess, as to whether or not they'll make it longer or not, which will really determine, in my opinion, whether or not the game is fully worth like a full price tag when the game originally comes out. Now from there, we had some side games. We had this Command and Conquer Rivals game that was mobile, and they had two guys play, and it was super cringy. As EA's MO when it comes to E3, they're like, how cringy can we be? And then of course they had, their sports stuff or whatever. They had like FIFA and whatnot, which I'm not much of a sports guy, so I'm literally looking at it and I was just like, oh, another sports game. I don't know, I've never gotten into that. So, I don't know. But Sea of Solitude, this game looked interesting. It is an indie game, mind you, an indie game being supported by EA, so I wouldn't necessarily call it an EA game. I'd call it a Mei game. Jo-Mei Games Studio. It's a German studio, apparently. How interesting. But, yeah, it's like this, your character is a monster? She looked all shadowy and weird, like she was a Heartless from Kingdom Hearts or something, but she was all alone, like Sea of Solitude, makes sense, but she was just all alone in this kind of dystopian future where these buildings of the city are partially sunken under the water, almost as if there was this great flood or something, and she basically is trying to, prevent herself from becoming the monster that she thinks she is or something? That's what it seemed like the premise was. There were some really cool giant monsters and sea creature things that was going on. And the graphics are lovely. I love beautiful water in my games. It's just a weird thing of mine. When I see a game that has like phenomenal looking water, I'm just like, I love this game. And the game had, in its own right, very fantastic water. It moved so realistically up and down over the waves as she went through the city on this tiny little rickety wooden boat. The concept is there, and the concept looks great. I just really hope, once again, this is an indie game, and a lot of indie games that look fantastic end up being so short that you're like, oh man, I would have loved more from that, but, it is what it is. They didn't have the budget or whatever. However, these people are being funded by EA, and that is a big thing to me. If they're being funded by EA, that makes me think there is a chance that this game will be, a decently sized game. I at least want 20 hours out of this. That's what I'm really hoping for, is a 20-hour gaming experience, if not more. Most of my average games get up to about 40 hours of gameplay, but those are like AAA titles. And with indie games, a lot of my indie games end up being like 10 to 15 hours. But if they're being sponsored by EA and they have the budget, I hope that they use that budget not only for making fantastic, gaming decisions, whether it be the gameplay or the graphics or the music, but I also want them to maybe take their time and make it longer, more in depth. You know what I mean? But we will see on that. And now, like I said, mobile Command and Conquer game. I haven't seen a Command and Conquer game in forever, but it's mobile, so what you gonna do? But then, Anthem. I am very interested in Anthem. I don't know I love BioWare, I love Mass Effect. They're some of my favorite games of all time, for sure, without a doubt. I have the trilogy, like all 3 games, on like 2 different consoles. I have it on PlayStation and I have it on PC. I love those games, but they're switching those games out for Anthem. That's the main thing here, is that they said they're putting Mass Effect aside now and they're pulling in this new IP called Anthem that's like these mech type suit things, I guess, but they're not quite mechs because they're more like body armor, almost like the body armor from Fallout, rather than being a mech. It's not super gigantic or whatever. It's just like a armor that you put over your body that also has jetpack. Like Iron Man. It's like Iron Man's suit. That's exactly what this is. It's a bunch of different Iron Man suits. One of them's like the Juggernaut, that's like the tank, and another one is the Mage and whatnot. So, it's your average classes that you get to pick from. But I remember like a year or 2 ago seeing the first Anthem trailer for this, and them saying that like armor components could be switched out, as well as like unique weapon sets and stuff. So that makes me think that you might be able to like combine different pieces of armor from one class, quote unquote, to another class. But at the same time, they didn't really touch on that at all on the conference. And I was like, what happened to that? I remember them talking about that. And I went back and watched it, and yeah, they talk about that. So I'm like, why didn't they even mention that at this EA? Did they get rid of it? Are they gonna keep it? I don't know. I hope they do, but it's anything goes with EA, They're the wild card. They'll do whatever they want, however they want to, no matter how much it, pisses off the entire gaming community, like in general, to the point where they're like, should we consider loot boxes to be like gambling thing? There are so many controversies that EA just loves to bring to the table, and so there's just no telling. I have no idea if Anthem is gonna be like fantastic, or a situation where everyone's gonna be begging them to bring back Mass Effect. They'll be like, we're sorry that we were upset with the latest Mass Effect game. We changed our mind. That game was fantastic. Just bring back Mass Effect, please. And we'll start begging on our hands and knees and filing petitions. I don't know. I have no idea what this game is gonna be. I feel like it's either gonna be fantastic, or a huge flop, or maybe somewhere in between. Some people say it's kind of like Destiny. I don't really know about that, because this one looks a lot more open-worldy than Destiny. Destiny was very, very linear, straightforward. Like, they had big open areas, but there wasn't really anything to do in them. You just more or less followed the main quest and then did the extra stuff to get, more legendary gear and whatever, and play with your friends. But this one looks a lot more open. I don't know how much more open, but it definitely looks more open than Destiny, which I've seen it compared to. So I'm not going to compare it to that. I'm going to say it's a lot more open world. I don't know. It's really hard to explain my feelings on this one, because it looks like it might be a Destiny thing, but at the same time, I don't know. It looks kind of like more of a co-op experience, like a 4-player co-op experience, than it does like a big old open Destiny situation. So I have no idea how to feel about this game at all yet. I'm so torn with this one. I mean, this is like, I don't know. I just don't know. That's pretty much all of the EA stuff that I wanted to talk about, though. It certainly wasn't the biggest EA experience, that's for sure. It was pretty short. I mean, it was long, but the game portions of it were crazy short. There was hardly any gameplay shown at all in any of the games. And when they had gameplay shown, it was just for a second. It was like, oh, now you get to see them jump. Okay, now we'll talk about it again for another 10 minutes. Oh, now you get to see them jet boost. Oh, now we're going to talk about it again for another 10 minutes. And then they teased like a boss fight, like, oh, you're going to get to see a boss fight in this Anthem track? Nope, you don't get to see that. Like, the most gameplay that I think of that we saw in this EA E3 was Unravel 2. And that even wasn't that much. I mean, we saw them run away from a turkey, and then it was like, there you go, co-op, we ran from a turkey. And it was like, oh, so much gameplay. So, I just don't know. I don't know what EA was thinking this year. They certainly are not bringing their A game, I feel like. They're just putting their bigger titles. There's a sport game, you know, Battlefront, Battlefield for sure. They're just bringing up. They brought out their bigger game titles, and then of course Anthem, which people are curious about, and then some indie games. And it wasn't that huge of a deal, you know. I remember, what was it, last year, the year before, that Sony was like, okay, all we're showing you is games. Game. Here you go, another game. You want another game? Here's more gameplay. Here's a game trailer. Here's a cool cinematic trailer. It was like, that's all they did for the entire thing, and it was awesome. Same with Nintendo, with their Nintendo Switch thing. They were like, oh, you want to hear about this game? You want to hear about Breath of the Wild? You want to hear about Mario Odyssey? You want to hear about all these indie games? Like, here you go, just games. And it's like, holy crap, Splatoon 2? Wow. But EA, they were just like, let us talk about this one game forever and not show you anything about it at all. And it was just a slog, really. Watching it alone, I was just like, gameplay? Any? At all? Please? Come on, guys. And it just like never came. I kept wanting more gameplay out of these things, and they never delivered. And even when they delivered gameplay, it was so short that I was like, did I actually see gameplay? It's over already. What happened? You know? So, I don't know. It was very disappointing in my opinion. I'm gonna say, out of like 10, I'm gonna give it like a 4 out of a 10, because there's always room for worse. It wasn't as cringeworthy as previous E3s, like Nintendo's Wii Music debacle. That was so cringy. But it wasn't that bad, where it was just like, why are we watching this? What is this? You know? But it was still pretty bad. It was still kind of cringy, and there was just so much more talking than there was actual, like, game reveals or gameplay at all, that I am hoping that the other ones don't follow this trend. I'm just saying. So, there you go. My opinion on E3 for EA. You know, 4 out of 10. There you go. I will see you in the next video when I talk about the next conference, which I think... What is the next one? It's like... It's not Bethesda. I think that's later. I think Microsoft goes next. I think Microsoft is the next one. So I will see you guys in the next video.